Yeah, here we are, folks. Another podcast that we're gonna shoot your way. If you've been living under a rock, and obviously you're not, you're watching this. It's all about Epstein, 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 and it never seems to go away. And one of the cool things about Pat and I is we've been talking Epstein stuff for years. I feel like it goes back 5, 7 years, right?
I think we were doing Epstein stuff at least 5, 7 years ago, maybe eight. And that also
Yeah.
includes other characters around this. Bill Gates, Elon Musk. We have been nibbling on all this stuff since the beginning.
Um, I've always been a big, Pat is coming around a little faster. Well, I was more into Pizzagate and a lot of these things that have come about, and me and Pat would probably butt heads on it in the past. The sad fact is that a lot of things are coming to light that show this is all real. And as I call it, a satanic Luciferian cabal underground of elites. It's very scary. We're becoming desensitized to it, kind of sadly, but at the end of the day, the amount of important people that are involved in this is very scary because it is sinister and it is evil. We're going to go over the facts, our opinions, what's come about with the DOJ release, the fact that half of it isn't released. A lot of people feel like, hey, if this is the half that you felt is safe for consumption, imagine what they're not sharing with us. And it's really kind of sad. And even as we discuss doing this, I think we're putting a target on ourselves, even, and everybody who talks about this, because I don't think the global elites are very comfortable with this information being known to the public.
I mean, I think you're right. I think that in the beginning, in my defense, I did push back on a lot of this stuff because of the absolute absurdity of it. Now, I'm certain that some conspiracy theories are true, a small percentage of them, but I think now we're almost living in a world where all the conspiracy theories are true. And the statement that keeps rattling around inside my head after reading, I think I've read about 380 of the Epstein files so far. The thing that keeps rattling around in my head is that all the monsters are real. All the monsters are real. That's the takeaway. If you take one thing away from this podcast that we're shooting right now, just know all the monsters are real. All the monsters are real, and you need to protect your children, you protect your wife, you need to protect yourself in this world because all the monsters are real. That's what I think.
You read what's going on and you say to yourself, like, how much worse can this get? We're talking about murder, children, torture, blood, sacrifices, pedophilia, human trafficking, and then who it's covering. It literally covers Hollywood, it covers sports, it covers the Middle East, and someone we're going to talk about in another video. It covers royalty, it covers politicians. Like, who doesn't it cover? I mean, it's really sad again and scary, the tentacles, as they like to call it, of what this really reaches out to. And it's all of these upper elites of people that we're told to look up to, which that's silly in and of itself. They're just human beings, but it's there is an elite, and like George Carlin said, we're not in it.
We're not in it. And here's what I think. I've put a lot of thought into this. So I think this is what happened, kind of. I think that in the old days, people think that this arc of humanity is really that long. It's not that long. Like modern society is not that long, right? It's only 150 years ago that people were shooting people in the Wild West. So what I think happened is there was a lot of, kings out there that had slaves and murdered people and had, concubines and all this stuff. And as humanity progressed, the middle class and the lower class, a lot of rules and regulations were put on them, and they became the civilized people that we all know and enjoy today. But the elites were never held by these rules. And some of these people, their families have been rich for so long, and they live in such tight-knit circles that are international circles where they're flying around on private jets and whatnot, and they're surrounded by their own security, and they're almost untouchable. And I think that we had the illusion that a lot of these elites were good people. But I think that what we're seeing now is this is back in the 70s and 80s and 90s. A lot of this was taking place before cell phones, before cameras were everywhere. And these elites were acting closer to like mob bosses, and people were dying. I mean, there's a document in here that talks about an orgy in which Robin Leach strangled a girl. Now, I mean, I don't know who would make that up. It's an insane thing to make up. It's an insane thing to say. It's an allegation. I want to be clear. But how do you fucking make something like that up? That Robin Leach strangled a girl in an
Yeah,
orgy? It's
it's
very
hard to
rare.
believe any. It's
So
hard
this
to believe any of this is
information
made
real,
up.
real.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that you said also is being above the law. There's a theory that when you're in this Babylon of the elite, that you are untouchable, that the law doesn't apply to you,
But
whether you
clear.
can buy your way out of it, barter your way out of it with power, make somebody's company, rich or something positive happened for them. So, and by the way, that does happen. I mean, that's why they do get away with it. We've even heard the stories of, like, even in down to regular law enforcement. Oh, it's not fair. He has a rich family and their son got off because they could afford a good lawyer or whatever. It's sad, but this is just how it works. So these
Oh,
people have it on
you see
steroids,
it in
right?
local politics too. You remember that, there's Kennedys that have been accused of rape, for instance, and gotten off. There's all sorts of, we can go through history and there's all sorts of instances of elites getting out of trouble. But what we have here, I think, is just a level above anything that we could have all ever possibly imagined. The things that are in these documents are mind-blowing and insane. And they show kind of an elite class that's very interconnected and it's very involved and really just like, having the sexual time of their lives and bound by no rules whatsoever and exploring every possible perversion. It's wild, it's disgusting, and it's criminal.
Well,
I don't even know what else to say.
yes and no. So this talks. I was just going to interject at this point. It sounds criminal, but at this point, it's not. No indictment, no one in trouble, no one on the horizon of being in trouble. Not one name. And I'm going to pivot to something, a media report that came out today. You may or may not be aware of that. We're going to bring up in this. But at this point, it's not criminal. The only criminal is Jeffrey Epstein. The only second criminal is Ghislaine Maxwell. It ends at two. That's what's scary as well. There's nobody else on the horizon, not Donald Trump, not Elon Musk, not Bill Gates, not Les Wexner, nobody that is in any trouble at this point. And it doesn't seem like it's on the horizon. Now, we'll be able to talk about, and you can look this up while I'm BSing about it, but Ro Khanna and Thomas Massie, a bipartisan situation, outed 6 names. And we're going to discuss one of those names, where they called out the names of 6 people that, like, they unredacted, basically, so to speak, in one of these congressional hearings just the other day, yesterday, maybe, or, whatnot. And one of them being Sultan Ahmed bin Sulayem. And that's an important name because we're gonna start off doing a deep dive on this gentleman. Fascinating character. But they named 6 people, Les Wexner being another one. Some of the other names aren't as familiar. They're even backtracking on that and saying, hey, none of these guys, they're not in any criminal trouble. They're just names that have been unredacted, and those are the 6 that we release right now that are definitely whatever. I thought some of these names were obviously already in there anyway, so I don't know what's unredacted, but like goes back to what you said. Right now, only 2 people are in trouble. One may be alive and out of jail, or who knows where he is. What depends what you believe. And the other one, she's sitting pretty right now.
He's
I don't know
about
if
to
she's
get out of
going to
jail,
do 25
probably.
years, but she's in a very cushy institution,
Well, look, let me respond to that.
alive.
So that's so much. So basically, the part about Les Wexner, I think, is really fascinating because when you talk about Les Wexner, you are talking about, Victoria's Secret, all these, children's stores. The Limited, I think, is one of his stores. Abercrombie and Fitch, things of that nature are all his brands, right? And you also see in the documents all these little modeling agencies, even elite modeling is in these messages, in these emails, and in these documents. And so I think at this point, if you're a parent and you put your child into a modeling agency, you are putting your child at risk. You're putting your child at risk. These agencies and these organizations have a prostitution and child trafficking arm to a lot of them. And that's what we're seeing here. Even big giant companies that you would never imagine, like Abercrombie and Fitch, that you would think would be the safest place for your child to work. And we had Victoria's Secret models that were involved in some of this stuff. So yeah, it goes all the way to the top. And I think that you could kind of understand how some of this ended up, right? The laws are different in different countries, right? If you travel down into the U.S. Virgin Islands, Colombia, different places, South America, Spain, wherever, there's a lot of legal prostitution in the world, right? The U.S. is a Puritan country. So our billionaires and the CEOs, when they started making this big tech money, this ridiculous amount of tech company because of these protected monopolies, because they say that we need them, what ended up happening is they have these yachts, they're traveling the world, they're getting exposed to this stuff. And I think it just ended up developing into this toxic thing where it's like this international yacht owners, private jet group of people that really believe they're above the rules. And in the Epstein pictures, they were eating at a table that has a huge American flag on it. And one of the victims had said that in a statement and nobody believed her. And she said they eat on the American flag because they're above the law. And then if you know that big Muslim block, I'm not familiar with what it's called, but they all pray to the big block. It's a very, holy spot for the Muslims. He had bought the carpet that covered that block and he had put it in his house and they were walking over it. So I just lets you see the level of audacity and how far above the law they felt they were.
Yeah, and no one's ever gotten in trouble. So in a sense, they are above the law because
Well,
who's
I
going to
don't
get
know
them
if
in
anybody
trouble?
will. Who's going to get him in trouble? I think that the QAnon types, they thought that Donald Trump was the savior, and it turns out we are all making fun of them, but they were right about a lot of stuff. And us progressives and regular news people like me, we need to admit that they were right about a lot of this stuff. But their fatal mistake was believing that Donald Trump was the savior when really he looks like he's more of the number two in command of the operation.
Well, that's a bold statement. Without a doubt, and this is someone that was a Donald Trump supporter. I've come to learn I'm not a supporter of really anybody at this point anymore. But he is. I think it's very silly to say that he's not implicit. Whether it's anything criminal, I don't know because again, none of them are going to be criminally charged or caught on anything. But to me, there's no doubt that they were close friends. Their fallout does not seem that it's based on pedophilia or children. I do not believe that that's what the fallout's from. I think it's financial and bad business dealings. I think Donald Trump cares more about his money and his business dealings than that Jeffrey Epstein is soliciting girls at Mar-a-Lago to go give massages at his
I don't
private
know about that.
parties.
I get he may have kicked him out for the one girl. That may have happened, that story. I don't know if
I
that's
think he
Trump's
used that as
PR
the
story
reason to kick
or
her
if
out.
that's real. But there's many documents showing him and Trump. Trump is mentioned in the documents over a million times. He's mentioned more in the documents than Harry Potter is mentioned in the Harry Potter series. So he's a
That's funny.
serious player. They're best friends. And
Yeah.
you know Trump from the early Howard Stern shows to his time in the presidency that this is a pervy guy. He's not going to turn around away from sex with young girls or pretty girls or any of that stuff. And
Models.
there's documents in there that show that Epstein was met Melania first, may have been dating Melania, and then introduced Melania to Trump. And that document is in the first batch that they just dropped. And so there's a lot of connections here. And the most disturbing ones are the ones where they talk about Trump and him throwing calendar girl parties at Mar-a-Lago, where they would auction off the girls to rich men. And
Yeah.
that just sounds like something that those two would do for sure.
Well, then there's the videos too, where you see them like they're watching the girls dance, and you see Jeffrey and he's leaning over and he's talking to them. I think they were very close. Keep in mind, a lot of people forget. There's New York ties that they had together, and there's West Palm Beach ties, and we're both in South Florida. We're well familiar with West Palm Beach. Very, very affluent area. Mar-a-Lago. A lot of people may not be familiar with the fact that it's in West Palm Beach. They hear the term Mar-a-Lago. I don't know if they know exactly where it is. And Jeffrey Epstein had ties to that. So these were guys that integrally knew each other, business dealings together. Both were involved in real estate. And so I believe that they knew each other very well and had a huge appetite for sex, like a lot of these people do. Men like sex, some like it more than others. Basketball player Stephon Diggs had 4 babies just this year. He got another one with Cardi B. He's just another guy, whatever. So people like sex. We can't knock that. That's not criminal. But when you're getting children involved and some of the other craziness and
What's
torture and
interesting though
murder and
too
all that.
is the different laws, right? So do we hold like people that are in the Middle East that have completely different laws around age of consent, are they held accountable to the US standard for the age of consent? So you get into some interesting international stuff here as well. But I also, what's fascinating, like the Sultan that you mentioned before, in the Sultan's country, sex before marriage is illegal. It's not even legal for regular people to do. Yet here's the Sultan, and he has accounts online. He's hiring women. He's hiring Russians, Moldovians, Ukrainians. He's bringing them to his yacht. I mean, he is having a vibrant sex life outside of marriage. And so there's a lot of contradiction here. And I wonder how much the citizens of the Middle East will accept from their leaders who are clearly breaking all the rules.
That's a good point. I don't know how the citizenry looks at the double standards and the hypocrisy of these gentlemen. It also seems to vary on what Middle Eastern country you're in, where they let this get watered down a little more, whether it's Dubai or Saudi Arabia, looks at it maybe one way, but Pakistan may look at it another way. So the strictness of it all, I can't really call that, but they
If you're
definitely
in
seem to.
Pakistan or Afghanistan, I doubt they give two shits what the women think about their rights. You know
Oh
what I
no,
mean?
I agree. So I
He
think
would he
some of
would be
these
a
countries
hero
are
in those countries,
I
you
think
know?
they're more strict than others. Saudi Arabia has loosened some of their strictness in how they go about some of this, especially because their leaders are enjoying and partaking in a lot of this Western debauchery. Like you have to ask yourself, this Sultan, and this may be a good time to pivot to him in our next video. But the question I think is, how much of this was he doing before he knew Epstein, and how much of it was he doing after? I would love to know how salacious this man really
It's
was until
interesting
he had this
too,
great
because
contact.
with the Sultan, there's a lot of talk of their friends. There's a true friendship between the Sultan and Jeffrey Epstein. So they're
Yes.
friends, number one. And the Sultan seems to be a guy who's very wealthy that gets a lot of escorts. He's in a repressed country, and so he hires a lot of hot escorts from other countries. Now, it seems to me, I haven't seen anything about young girls with the Sultan. So he could be a guy that's just getting
No.
a lot of escorts that are his age. So or not his age, but I mean of legal age. So is that the end of the world, his crimes per se? So there's a lot of nuance here. Different people are, different things. People are into different things, and certain things are illegal and certain things are not. But the one thing I want to talk about in this pre-video that we're doing here, we're going to go through all the characters and we're going to go through like some different facets of this. It's going to end up being a 20 video series at least. But one part that I think is crazy, and I know you're keen on this too, is the language. The language around words like pizza, the language around words like beef jerky, the language around words like meat. There's a code language here. Like weed dealers have a code language, or drug dealers have a code language. There's a code language here, and we don't really know it. Somebody does. Somebody has to give us the codes, the keys to the codes. Like where are the keys to the codes? I've seen a little key come out, but like this thing about the beef jerky, that's a mystery. Somebody's got to tell me what the beef jerky is. Like I need to know what the fuck are they talking about with beef jerky?
You're probably never going to get an actual translation on it, but you can. A lot of this
Doesn't
is
one of the
deduction.
victims know? Doesn't one of the victims know? Can't they tell me?
Well, I mean, you could always direct message her on X if you want to try to find that out. But
Hi, Epstein victim. I'm Patrick. Can you tell me what this means?
what's the bottom line with this
Yeah,
jerky?
Jesus.
No, I will say this. Just like with pizza and all these other things, you have to make your own deductions on it. You may not get a 100%, but in the context it's being used, it's quite clear they're not talking about food, because in one specific one that's always brought up is, let's have some pizza for an hour. We only need it for an hour. Well, no one talks about eating food in that manner, so you already know this isn't food. Again, you got to use some intellect here and realize, yes, this is code. Whether it's street talk, drug dealers use code, the mafia uses code, everybody uses code so that they can't be implicated in an actual crime or problem. If these people use these out and out terms, and we're talking about children and openly in emails, which they're already very open about in these emails, a lot of people really let their hair down thinking that these were private and have said a lot of things that are crazy. You could just kind of deduce what some of it is. The jerky one is a tricky one. It's hard to say exactly what it is. I've heard many different opinions on it, but we're starting to see. And I think it would make for a great video as one of these, to be where we do discuss all of these common terms and what we think they do mean. I think that'll make for a great video.
Yeah. So the pizza one, I think is clear. They're talking about escorts, whether boys, girls, regular age, normal age. I don't know. It seems that one's talking about escorts because there's so many. Hey, meet
It's
this
definitely
person.
a person,
Yeah, meet this person.
not a
Pizza,
pizza.
pizza, pizza. There's a lot. Yeah. So that's that. But what blew my mind is the beef jerky ones, because they're talking about eating the beef jerky, and it really leads you to believe that maybe they're eating people or something. That's the
There
initial
seems
thought.
to be a
That's the
cannibalistic
initial
twist.
thought. And then it
Well,
mentions hiring a chef that's named, or he works at a restaurant called Cannibal, and he's willing to
right.
play ball. So it's very weird. But
And
then
that
it
is a
has,
real restaurant in DC. And I remember hearing its name in the past. And again, keep in mind, everybody, human meat, cannibalism, it does exist, whether it's more primitive cultures or whatever. We know that it's real. And I believe that there are people that think of it also as a very decadent type of thing that could be like, done in private parties or whatnot.
I
So
mean,
I think there's more people
excess
eating
leads to
this.
things. Yeah, so that's what I was talking about earlier, where I think you have these elites that grow up in a whole different world from us, and they have these old school, old world thoughts from leading countries and kingdoms and shit like that, and weird stuff that they do, and that's kind of been passed down through some of these elites. And I think that they get a kick because they have nothing else to do except fly around on jets and spend money and participating in maybe some
Well,
weird
ask
kind
yourself
of
this, Pat.
what do they call those things? Like, like a weird ritual. I think they could easily be attracted to something like that.
Absolutely. I think ritual is a good word. Well, here, riddle me this. If somebody put on a plate in front of you and there was no stigma attached to either, and one was a snail and one was human meat, is there really a difference of the bar factor here of what you're going to really put in your mouth? I would never put a snail in my mouth, but people do. In France, this is a delicacy. But I would never, I've seen what a snail looks like. I would never want to eat one. I would sooner look at a piece of human meat and give that as much a thought as I would a snail.
Okay, so stop there. That's what everybody thinks. But then there's another email that says, "My dog ate the jerky. I need them to send me a few jerkies to a lab." What the fuck does that mean? Is
Hard
that
to
so
understand,
then
you know, what that would mean.
is the jerky drugs? Or because I want another email,
Yeah.
Epstein says, "I need you to prepare a platter of jerky." So are they talking about cocaine? Is the jerky cocaine? And then another email, one of the rich guys says, "I went through 70 pounds of the jerky. It was crazy. Blah 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 blah."
Well, it does beg an
Or
interesting
is
point.
jerky, is pizza, is every food just escorts? You know,
I don't know
I
if
think
it's
it's different.
drugs, but here you stumble across an interesting point. One thing I've never really seen in any of these emails is the talk of drugs in any way. So that
No,
is an interesting point.
it,
Other than this, possibly, I don't think I've seen anything that alludes to any drug use by
okay.
anybody.
So let's stop there for a second. So I thought that too. So that's the begs the question because a lot of circles that are doing escorts, things of that nature, you would see cocaine, ecstasy, these types of drugs. But
Sure.
this group of men is very smart and a little bit nerdy and a little bit square. It's possible that they were doing all this without drugs. So the drugs thing is a big question mark, but there is involvement in the emails from the Sinaloa cartel. But I don't know if that's on the drug level or whatever. So you're looking at a scenario where Epstein could possibly be working with the Sinaloa cartel with their money or whatever, have kilos stashed in the basement that he's using for the parties and he puts out platters or whatever. Or the beef jerky could be something even darker. The best case scenario is prostitution, or it could be something to do with cannibalism or something like that. And that brings me to the last thing I want to talk about in this preview, which is the designer baby thing. There's a girl in there, she has a journal, and she talks about being a human incubator because of her genetics, her eye color and her hair color. And that once she has the baby maybe cries really quickly, and she gets to feed it for a second, and then it's gone. She never sees the baby again. And there's entries in a journal like, "Where is the baby? You were so perfect. Like, where are you guys?" And so I think Epstein was having some of these, the girls were escorting, this is the 80s, 90s, whatever, they're getting a lot of pregnancies, and he was doing a lot of in-house abortions. And I think he was also, some of the girls in certain instances, he had the babies if they were met certain criteria, and then those babies might have been sold on the open market or could be out there somewhere. And there's some talk of his children, people email him like, "Hey, your baby's 19 today." So it's just very
Yeah,
interesting.
that
There's
that it,
definitely undocumented babies in the world that came from the Epstein syndicate that are out there. And I don't know if they were bought for adoption, bought for nefarious purposes, or what.
it
That is an
seems like
insane
we
stuff.
don't know enough about that because those are things that might be very unprovable. And I'm sure people want to know, and I would definitely want to know what the Epstein spawn tentacles of how many of these are children of Epstein's or whatnot, or and they may never know they're from him. By the way, he was a donor, a sperm donor, whatever. But he definitely was trying to create his own class of a superior class. He was a eugenicist, it seems, in some way, which just makes sense why he's
Yes, they
tied to
were
Bill
very
Gates.
racist and they were very Aryan like centered. There's a
Yes,
lot of
very
stuff
Aryan,
about
which
that.
is interesting for he was a Jew, but he definitely had Aryan views of a superior race, which also leads to the whole Goyim thing. He feels that Jews are superior. A lot of Jews feel that they're superior to Gentiles, that they're more intelligent, they're more business savvy. So he definitely, I think, was tooting his own horn and thought he was a very special type. So yeah, but as far as his children go, that's a very fascinating area. I just I've never seen enough leads to know
And
if we'll
he didn't
ever
leave his fortune
find
to his
out.
children. He didn't leave his fortune to his children. He left his
Did
fortune to
not.
an associate who could be like a Russian or Israeli type
Well,
asset.
I
So
don't want to say her name just yet.
if he was a secret agent of sorts or associated with them, he chose not to leave his money to his friend, his brother, even,
No,
or whatever.
strange.
There's people like his brother that got little pieces of money, but the majority of his assets went back to like another player in
It's
the
well,
game.
there's another
And I think that
girlfriend, and
that also leads to believe that he's involved with some agency and that money is funneling back towards whatever agency controlled him. And then the last thing I want to say on this, and then I'll let you say the final piece
uh,
is I think that what this shows what happens when you do two things. When you don't smash monopolies and you believe that these corporations need their tech so that you let them get so big, I think that's a problem we're seeing now. And when you let people get so rich from these monopolies, it's a problem because now what you have is these people are so wealthy, they're creating their own world and their own rules. They're on international yachts, international planes, they're bouncing between the countries that they want to do the things they want to do. They have as much money as governments. You know what I mean? They have too many connections in politics and they put too many politicians in place. So I think what you're seeing right now, this deep, deep, disgusting criminal perversion is basically a result of overcapitalization and runaway capitalism and end stage capitalism. That's what's happening here. We've let these people get too rich, and we've seen what happens when people get too rich. Putin has enough money to affect our government, and our own elites have enough money to go around the world and do whatever crimes they want. And that's a fucking problem. The people are too rich.
Well, that's like the genie out of the bottle, though. You may have been able to stop that if it never existed, but now that everyone's had the candy, it's one thing if the baby never had the candy and it's not going to cry because it never had the candy. But if you take the candy away from the baby, it's going to cry. So this is a problem. I agree, but it's
But
a
you
problem
also have the
it's never
billionaire,
going to
like,
go away.
yeah, the billionaire like Elon Musk, he has the candy, he's still crying.
Well, that right, and that's another story. But you can't undo this now. These people want this money, and I don't want to go down this rabbit hole, but they're trying to live forever to spend this money. So
And
not
that's
only do
what
they
they want
have
the
it,
AI for.
they want to live forever to spend it
Yeah,
and
and
give it to their families.
that's where the AI comes in. So I agree. I don't
Yeah.
think we'll ever live in a world without billionaires now, and I think that's the problem. So let's end this here. Everyone tune in for the rest of this series because we're going to go through all of these characters. Lord knows it's going to be wild. And we'll see you next time.
Yes. Thank you for listening.